Hey, welcome to Sambo's Place. Listen, I want to thank everyone for checking in with the channel, commenting, supporting the channel. Really appreciate that. I do this on my spare time, basically for fun, but basically what it is to help you, the consumer, make some very qualitative choices before you go and you spend your hard-earned money. And that's what the objective of today's video is going to be all about. We unboxed and we assembled the brand new Smoque XL, which hit the streets about a week and a half ago for the public to purchase. Now, full disclosure, I did not pay for this grill. In partnership with the Weber program, they sent me this grill for review, but that is not going to sway my opinion in any way. I'm going to tell you if this thing shines. I'm going to try and explain some things about it, and I'm going to let you know whether or not it's something that's worth your money, or if it sucks, maybe it's something that you just need to pass on. Perhaps you're shopping the entire smoking network, and there's a lot of smokers out there for $1,000 and less that you could look into and you could buy. And we haven't done any cooking on it yet, and there's a lot to unpack today, so stick with me on this. But basically what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at the innards of what this Smoque XL is all about. We're going to compare it to what we already know and experienced on the SearWood, and we're going to try and make sense of the niche that this product fits in, because initially, and I have to apologize for this, initially I figured that Weber just repurposed their cookbox and their hopper and just slapped a different PID controller in it, re-engineered some of the smoking directions and flow inside. I don't know, maybe they got a water bench going and they were doing some flow work and engineering, or they incorporated some AI to figure out a better way to smoke. I just thought that they did that, but I was severely mistaken, and I have to apologize, because throughout the video, I make a lot of comparisons between the two, and I got to tell you this right now. This is an entirely new cookbox. It's 2 inches shorter than the SearWood, where the SearWood has 36 inches of cook space. This has 34 inches of cook space. But the interesting piece is the grill grates are the exact same grill grates that are in the SearWood, which means you could use the Weber crafted insert ware, like the pizza stone if you want to make pizza, or the wok if you want to use the wok, whatever. You could use the Weber crafted inserts. Now, having said that, that's about where the similarities tend to end in the cookbox and the cook space. It does affect the rotisserie, and I'm going to show you that. For those of you who are wondering if the rotisserie for the SearWood 600 XL fits the Smoque, you're talking about a 2-inch difference. It does not. We'll get into that. The only other similarity that I could see is that the pellet hoppers, even though the Smoque is mounted much higher than the SearWood's hopper, there's still the same amount of hopper capacity. You have 12 inches from the auger shaft to the top of the hopper on both of these. So they repurposed the hoppers. They use the same hoppers. Everything else is different. The auger system is different. The firebox system is different. The way the inside is set up is completely different. Ash and grease management is completely different on these two. Let's take a dive into what makes this grill different than the SearWood, perhaps what's going to make it better, my thoughts on, is it going to be any easier to maintain or clean than the SearWood? I don't know. But I'll say this. If you followed my channel, you'll know that I've always thought the SmokeFire was the ultimate smoker, and it just pumped the smoke. And I got better smoke rings, deeper smoke rings. I got a better smoke signature with the SmokeFire than I did with the SearWood. Now, having said that, the SearWood is a very capable smoker, and many people have reviewed it and said the same thing. So I kind of question, why is Weber introducing a unit like this when they already have a fairly capable smoker right here? Could this be an updated version of the SmokeFire? I don't know, because it definitely has a different PID controller interface in it, and it definitely has a different flow bench system for the smoke inside of it. So I'm hoping that this compares more to the SmokeFire smoking capabilities than the SearWood does. But where the SearWood really shines is its versatility in everything else. Grilling, griddling, you name it, roasting, searing, it does it all. With the Smoque, Weber basically says, this is your roaster and this is your smoker, only going to 500 degrees, whereas the SearWood goes to 600 degrees with manual modes included in the PID controller. Those are the major differences of the two. But let's break this down in the garage. Let's take a look at some of the assembly on this and comparisons. But my thoughts, as I was proven wrong after I actually got out the measuring tape when this thing was assembled, and where we go from here. Okay, so before I go and put the cook box lid back on, I thought I would give you an inside look here and just kind of work backwards. Weber doesn't give any of these parts any names in the directions, so I'm just going to kind of call them the way I see them. Now what you're looking at here, to me, is a two-purpose, actually three-purpose stainless steel tray. It's on an angle away from the hopper, and you could see that by the angle of these heat deflectors that are also stainless steel that are mounted on top. The three purposes that I see this is, first of all, it's a grease flow and an ash flow, and by the slots around it, I'm guessing that this is also a heat deflector and a diffuser to allow the smoke to roll up into the meat from all angles of the cook area. Again, remembering that the firebox is up here, and that is exactly where your heat source is emanating from. So it's going to be interesting to see what a biscuit test does with the firebox up here than in the center by the SearWood. So I'm going to remove these two heat deflectors. They are stainless, and you know, I'm kind of wondering, as I'm looking at these and I'm looking at this stainless steel tray, if it might not be a good idea to coat these things in aluminum foil and poke holes through them. I don't know yet, because to me they seem like they're going to be pretty laborious to clean up. So this tray right here rests on, if you take a note of these embossed flanges on the end, they rest right here on where that huge flavorizer and heat deflector bar is on the SearWood. Now taking a look below here, you could see that we have this grease and ash chimney, and this just goes in place with this wing nut, and it's stamped and riveted and a little flimsy, to be honest with you, and it really doesn't sit flush when you tighten the stainless steel wing nut. And over here you have a heat deflector that goes on top of your firebox, and this is in no way as substantial as the SearWoods. I mean, it's maybe 1.5 pounds. You can see the thickness on the metal right there. Nothing like the SearWood, and I'm interested to see how it's going to last in terms of durability, and how it's actually going to work, because it's angling the heat downward this way with the fan blowing it out. It also has vents on the sides, so it's going to be very interesting to see. One other piece that's in here is this stainless steel bracket that just kind of lays in place right there. I'm not quite sure exactly what it does just yet, because that big grease tray and ash tray and heat deflector tray rests on those 4 bosses that are in the bottom of the cook box. So it'll be kind of interesting. There's some very interesting items that we need to point out now that we have all of the guts out of the smoke box. And you know what? Sambo's Place is believing that this is the same identical bottom half of the cook box that you have with the SearWood XL. I mean, you have the area here where those slide-in aluminum plates went on both sides. You could see that it has the same opening on the bottom, and instead of the ash pan slide bracket mounting up from the bottom, they have this aluminum pan that's bolted up or screwed up from the bottom. You don't have the vast gaping expanse for the grease and the ash that you do on the SearWood. You just have this opening right here, which I'm assuming is going to be an ash collector. Most notably, the firebox is not in the middle. It's all the way over here to the right, which means you have a much shorter auger, and you have a much shorter auger throw. Now that firebox does not look to be as big and robust as the one in the SearWood, but I'm going to take it out and compare it nonetheless. I just thought it would be interesting to point out what items are so familiar and what items are new between the two models. Okay, so the firebox came out with the same stainless wing nuts that they use on the SearWood, and this metal bracket, this housing right here, looks to be very similar in engineering to what they use on the SearWood. And you could see that it's a very similar auger and it's a very similar glow plug setup as well. But what is very different is the size and the shape of the firebox on the Smoke. It doesn't have that big weld flared bottom like it does on the SearWood. This kind of has like a peanut shape to it, and it has ventilations across the bottom as well. But it's different. It's a two-piece welded in. It doesn't seem to be as substantial and robust as the SearWood, but then again, you know, the SearWood's got to handle more volume of pellets, and it's got to handle more heat and burn capacity in manual modes to get up to 600 degrees. Okay, so here's a familiar issue I remembered from the SearWood. Obviously, they didn't correct it. If you notice that screw is going into the lag nice and clean and 90 degree, and there you have a screw that's going in and it's not 90 degrees, which means that the threading on those lag plugs right there is not correct from the factory. And I remember when I was doing my SearWood that I had one of these issues too, and it took just about everything and a socket with an Allen key to get that thing driven home without stripping the hell out of either the lag or the screw. Okay, so here we are, and right off the bat you could see that there's a difference in height on the PID controller and the hopper on the Smoke than there is on the SearWood. And you can see how much higher that hopper is mounted than it is on the SearWood. That's rather interesting. Now, what else is interesting is the SearWood came with that inner hood guard, that piece of stainless. Heat shield maybe, I don't know. But looking at the Smoke, it does not. You just have that beautiful ceramic paint finish on the inside of the hood. Now, the good news is the ash and grease catch that comes with the Smoke takes the same aluminum foil inserts that you could do in the Genesis, and that you can also do in the Smokefire, and you can do in the SearWood. So it's the same product. You don't have to go and reach for new aluminum catch pans. After taking some measurements, I was proved incorrect. And here's some interesting comparisons. I'm sorry for my messy bottom shelf right there. I haven't power washed it yet in a while. From the ground to the cook space is 35 inches on the SearWood. And from the ground to the cook space on the Smoke is 34 inches. So it's an inch shorter. I did measure the hoods, and the height or the crest of the hood on the SearWood is a little over 12 inches. And the height and the crest of the hood on the Smoke is a little over 10 inches. So there is a 2-inch difference. Now, how that would affect head-on comparisons in terms of smoking, we're gonna find out. The bottom shelf, my bottom messy shelf, and I apologize for that, on my SearWood really gave the bottom of this pit substantial strength and rigidity that the Smokefire did not have. I was very, very hesitant when I saw that this did not come with a shelf and that you had to buy one separately. However, I'm gonna tell you that the addition of these cross braces on the bottom, where I'm assuming the bottom shelf would bolt in if you bought it, are very substantial and makes this very rigid when you are moving this pit back and forth or across your workspaces. So, and you know what, I apologize for my deck. I know it needs to be refinished and everything. However, we were supposed to have it replaced this year and it's just not working out. So I figured I'm not gonna mess with painting the deck when we're probably gonna get a new deck next year. So I took the upper rack from the Smoke to see if it fits on the SearWood, and it does not. You could see that it comes up short a couple inches, And I wondered, how is that possible since the cooking grates are the same? Well, if you've ever noticed how much play and space you have left over on the SearWood between your grates, you don't have that on the Smoke, which tells me that my initial thoughts were incorrect. This does not utilize the SearWood cookbox or the SearWood cookbox hood. They are all proprietary. So this is a very interesting grill. I really thought that Weber would have kind of dovetailed pieces from this into pieces from this. So maybe Weber smarter than we know. So Weber touts the Smoke series of grills as the perfect smoker and the perfect roaster. But what would a roaster be without the ability to add a rotisserie to it? So in my comparisons here, I come to find out that the shaft skewer assembly for the rotisserie that fits the SearWood XL does in fact fit the cookbox for the Smoke XL. And you can see it right here. I'm showing you how the shaft itself fits down into the cutouts. You could see the little wear marks where it rotated through on my SearWood, and that there's a secondary set of a notch on the skewer for it to go into maybe the Genesis cookbox, but it also fits this cookbox. However, when I took the bracket assembly off of my SearWood and I tried to apply it to the Smoke, I had to flip the outside bracket plate upside down, and I had to use the lowermost screws to raise the bracket assembly up. Once that was in place and the motor slid down over the bracket, there was binding that occurred. And even if you were to space the bracket away with some washers and maybe some longer hardware, it still doesn't fit the bracket assembly correctly. It's kind of off center and it wobbles, and I wouldn't want to screw up the gears on a motor just trying to kind of jimmy rig this thing to fit the Smoke XL. So if you're wondering what the Weber Connect interface looks like, here's some screenshots of mine. And I added my Smoke to it after I did the software update. I could toggle back and forth between my SearWood and my Smoke. Very simple to operate. It's very straightforward. It's just buttons to toggle through to set your temperature. If you're on the SearWood, it's going back and forth between your modes. You have a nice broken line graph that displays your temperature over time. You could set alerts. You could set timers. It's a nice little interface to use. We're going to do a burn off process, and basically we're going to remove all the industrial lubricants and residues that went into the assembly process, the stamping process, the milling process, and everything that was involved in getting this together. Now, I want to point out that Weber was kind enough to send me this. They also sent a cover for the Smoke. They also sent a 3-piece grill tool set for the Weber Smoke, and it works nicely with the accessory plugs that they have on the front here, but tool management is still questionable with the Smoke. You know how I mentioned that so many times with the SearWood. When you get the Smoke, you also get 2 heat probes with it. That's really nice. Only got one with the SearWood, and they also send you one of these scraper tools along with it as well. But having said that, Weber also sent me a bag of pellets to get my stuff going. Pretty simple here with the Smoke interface. We have 5-degree temperature increments. We're going to set this to 400 and we're going to let it roll. I can tell you right now, the startup is just as smooth and just as quiet as the SearWood. Another very smooth and quiet device from Weber. Well, we have smoke, and it took a little bit longer because obviously the auger wasn't filled up with the pellets from the get-go, but yeah, we're getting some smoke. We're going to get this up to temperature. I can't tell you how important it is to do a burn off. I mean, the smell of the industrial fabrication residues and lubricants coming off this pit You definitely do not want to spray this thing with oil and just encapsulate everything in this pit. You want it to burn off first, and I let it roll at 400 degrees for about 45 minutes. So where does this grill fit in? Well, I'm going to make some predictions without even cooking on it just yet. If you are a gas grill kind of guy and you're looking to dip your toes into the pellet smoking realm, and you want a large cook space to do some smoking and some roasting, but you still want to use your gas grill for grilling and griddling, this would be for you. If you are a charcoal guy and you've cooked on a charcoal Weber kettle for years, and you're looking to get your toes into the smoking arena, but you still want to use your kettle for your grilling and your searing and your griddling and all that, and you want a large cook space to do some smoking on, this would be for you. If you were a person who maybe bought the smaller smoke fire unit or the smaller SearWood unit, and you're saying to yourself, gee, I wish I would have opted for the larger XL version of both of those, this would be for you. So in the upcoming videos, we're going to do a biscuit test, and we're going to find out how this new flow pattern of smoke that they're touting as being the premium solution to smoking your meats thoroughly. We're going to find out temperature zone wise how this new system affects heating areas and zones inside this smoke. Then we're going to start doing some cooking. We're going to do a cook off between the two. I might even throw the griddle on and see if the griddle will fit and pump this sucker up to 500 degrees just to see if we can griddle. We're going to try some burgers and some dogs, maybe even some steaks and some chops. And we're going to throw them on there just to see if you can get a decent grilling experience out of what they tout as just basically a smoker and a roaster. So, you know what? I really appreciate you hanging in there for Sambo's Place, and we'll see you back soon. Thanks again.